Herzlich willkommen beim 36. DOK.fest hier in München. Mein Name ist Sebastian Sorg und ich freue mich sehr, heute das Publikumsgespräch zu dem Film Here We Move, Here We Groove mit dem Filmemacher Sergej Kreso und mit Soko zu führen, die beide zugeschaltet sind. Es ist ein Film, der bei uns in der Reihe Doc Music läuft und deswegen auch für den Publikumspreis nominiert ist. Bis zum 21. Mai können Sie auf unserer Webseite beim Publikumspreis mit abstimmen. Das ist ein wichtiger Preis, der nicht nur Geld bringt, den der Bayerische Rundfunk und Dreisat gestiftet haben, sondern auch ein wichtiger Preis, der nach außen hin zeigt, welcher Film vom Publikum ganz besonders viel Anerkennung bekommen hat. Von daher möchte ich Sie bitten, mit abzustimmen für den Film, den wir natürlich mit viel Freude heute hier begrüßen dürfen. Also sage ich Hallo, Sergej Kreso aus den Niederlanden heute und Soko, ich denke aus Berlin. Hallo.
Hello. Hello, greetings from Poland.
So, Sergej, I'm starting with you. You're the filmmaker, and of course, it's always the first question, how did you come into this great situation to start doing a movie with Soko, one of the guys that I think over the frontiers of Berlin is pretty well known for the Balkan Beats parties and for a lot of music during the past 20 years. What was the beginning of this project?
Actually, I have to say that my first film idea is very old. I start writing something that could be a script for this film in 2008, 2009, and those years were the best years of the Balkan Beats. Balkan Beats was at that time real music phenomenon in all Europe, here in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. You had Balkan beer parties in almost every big city in Western Europe. There are some kind of Balkan beat parties. And I was really curious why this kind of music, which mixed Balkan traditional music with modern genres as a techno, dance, and the pop music, why the young West European public liked this. Because I'm coming from the Balkans, the same as Robert, and for us it was always the music of village, of peasants, of old people. But that kind of mix was something really interesting, and I was playing with the idea of making the film about Balkan Beats, but I couldn't find the real strong elements of the film, because music is really charming, and it's but it's not easy. I believe it's not easy to make the good film, good documentary about the music. And 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, I had contact with Robert, and he told me about his new musical project. 5-6 years ago started what we call, that's a big migration process from people coming from Syria, Middle East to Europe, especially to Germany and Berlin. And Robert was curious, is it possible to repeat in some kind the history, as he came from the Balkans in the 90s, bringing his cultural baggage, something interesting. What the new migrants carrying in their baggage? Is that also some kind of music that he can mix with his music? And for me, that was the start of the idea of making the film about Balkan beats, but also about the migration process in Europe.
So that was kind of the script at the beginning, or the idea to do a film that is not only connected to the parties, to the music, to like a concert movie about the artist as a portrait, because we have now like a film which tells us 3 stories. It tells about, like, it's a portrait of a fascinating guy, and it starts like being just ping pong. It's just like you're pointing a camera on somebody who just gives something back. directly, and you have such a strong connection, and suddenly you're on the road. It's a road movie. It's something about something which is just happening. Okay, we have refugees, and then, okay, but we also have a story in mind, and at the end it's about identity, something which is really interesting for everybody. So I was really fascinated how you put all this together, because I was always waiting for that, okay, he's doing the portrait about this guy, he's also like spending some time with the family, but at the end we have half an hour of a concert movie, which is not happening. Which is great, but it has a complete new structure. So was it up from the beginning your idea to do that film like that, together with Robert? Did you do ping pong? Did you have a script? And how did you achieve that?
I had some kind of script or film treatment, and I knew what I want to put in the focus of this film, because in that time, 5 years ago, with huge mass of migrants, refugees coming to the Europe, it was certainly that I have opportunity by following Robert to make much bigger picture. And at that time, I was always stressing that point of the film, that will be actually the film about Europe. The music was, for me, I mentioned that in some versions of my script, like a Trojan horse. It's like a toy. It's a nice thing that can make the port open. And if the music makes your heart and your soul open, then the film brings other, even more important elements of the story. And what I'm talking about, the form and the style of the film, it's almost impossible to make film about Balkan Beats that is slow and meditative. Because if you know the Balkan Beats, it's a very energetic music. It's a lot of passion. And I saw a connection between that kind of vitality, in the vitality and the power and the strength of the migrants who are trying to achieve their goal. And in the next step, I realized that in the film I can follow the Robert in his way of making music. And he called that cultural recycling. As he says in one moment of the film, what I'm doing is actually cultural recycling. That is not taking the part of the different music, films, and sometimes they don't belong with each other. But if you mix it, you can get some new substance. And in that sentence, I forced myself and my crew, my cameraman, and especially my editor, to play with different elements. And I like your description of the film, almost 3 films, ping-pong, jumping from different parts and telling something new. In that way, I liked that, not that I liked it, but I felt almost obligated to follow him, his way of making music, in his way of communicating, playing elements from the different cultures, bringing together. And in that sentence, I really believe that his music mirroring the culture of the Europe today, because it's so difficult to speak about pure European culture without taking different parts and bringing them together.
Yes, great, thank you. It's, so at the end, very much maybe a spirit or a music, a style that is telling us a lot about culture and identity, and of course about the person, Robert. So Robert, next question is to you. How was it to start this film project for you?
Well, in the very beginning, it has been a little bit confusing because we just didn't know what to tell next, because what was Balkan Beats starting in the end of the 90s and then going all the way through the present time was somehow flagging at some point, was not at its peak anymore. The hype was over. And I found myself in a situation where I felt like I have nothing more to say. Okay, what do you want me to tell? I'm now, at that time, maybe 45, 6. I did something, turned out to be interesting. Happy for that. But what's next? So, and then what's next actually is that new blood, let me name it like this, new people would cross borders, many borders, and try to build up new life, just like I did a few decades ago. And you would have them around you. It was evident, it was real. Change is happening. And what me and Sergej then at some point, I would say, concluded together is, let's try to zoom or to focus onto the change as a dynamic which is inevitable in life, in any culture, in civilization ever since. So change is permanently perpetuating itself. And therefore it's, I think, interesting, or it was interesting for us to document it and to try to keep it alive in the movie in order to eventually answer certain questions we all have. People coming, going, migration, politics, culture exchange, etc., etc. What does it mean? And we try to do that. And I guess we are eventually giving certain answers to certain questions, or at least illustrating certain situations.
So, but at the end, it's very much about you as well.
Well, okay, yeah, probably Sergej as a director needed someone as a protagonist in order to give it, to give the story a face, which in that case was my face, and I'm absolutely fine with that. And I guess so. My life story is also very, how to say, colorful. By being already mixed down in Bosnia, Croat father, Serbian mother, coming to Germany, starting new life in Germany. My present wife, or my wife, is having Arabic roots, but grew up in Paris. It's all very mixed. I have a child who is already with the age of 4 speaking several languages. And I think, and then on top of it all, of course, my Balkan Beats activity and a producer and the DJ story were interesting elements for him to somehow encapsulate the story around it.
When we are watching you, because this film is not called Robert Soko, his next album, or his next life, it's something else. It has a theme. So was it kind of the framework that you needed to do the film together? Because you are also inviting the filmmaker into your family. We are part of discussions and of really, I would say it's not just showing family structures or just showing like, okay, he has a family life. It's really transporting and telling a lot which is on the topic. So was that kind of a framework that you both needed to work together, or was it just like you would spend time together and all these things just happened?
I would rather say it was the second option. I mean, me and Sergej, he is of course director, coming up with an idea, and I'm the subject, but we didn't really plan much ahead what's going to happen next. He would rather follow what is naturally happening. I remember clearly back then, I was asking him, you know what, I mean, it's not, don't try to show me as a hero of anything. I'm not a hero at all. I'm just a normal person who happened to be in space and time. And on top of it all, I wanted to be a little bit more politically incorrect in the movie, depicted more politically incorrect. Why? Because I personally strongly believe that life is not politically correct. And I wanted to somehow, through my, not acting, but freedom in expression, put this on the map as well. These elements of prejudices, elements of not necessarily welcoming certain situations, / questioning certain situations in a way you would not expect them to happen in this movie, because movie is to some extent propagating multiculturalism, etc. And well, back to your initial question, a framework. not that he came with a concrete idea how it should go. It was just like, okay, let's jump into that cold water and let's swim together. Let's see what we're gonna hit in our way.
Great, that works very, very well, and it's impressive how, I mean, I think for myself it wouldn't be easy to invite somebody into my family life, and my daughter being suddenly part of this whole story, and she does it so well, and you're doing it, of course, doing it so well, because it's so logical, and I think it
also needed a certain sensibility, which definitely came from the crew. From Sergej himself as a person who from the very beginning acted as some sort of my friend. You know, it never really felt like, oh, there is this director coming with the crew, now we have to pretend to be God knows what. No, it felt like from the beginning, me and him having a beer and talking about life and this and that. And so was the crew, mostly the cameraman and the sound engineer, and it all felt very natural. So that very soon, in the process of filming, we didn't feel them anymore. It felt like, okay, they're just filming something where we don't mind. I guess this is why certain scenes in the movie are very, how to say, genuine, I guess. Or at least this is what people say for now.
So before I'm coming back to Sergej, last question at the moment for you. During the film, we have this work in progress with artists that you are meeting, collecting, inviting, that you are working with. How are they doing now, and what happened after the film? Did the film or the filmmaking or the working together change something, or what happened? Are there some stories you can tell us?
These young people, I say on purpose, and of course they're young, they are still around from what I know. Of course, I'm not in touch with every single of them, but they're all here somehow establishing their life. The main, let's say, main character, Ferdus from Afghanistan, is somewhere nearby Munich, integrating slowly into the society and making his way through the administration. The other people are all here, they're all fine, they're all doing well, so to speak.
Did you go on working with them?
Well, after the movie was done, we all needed a break. And to be honest, Corona then hit and messed up everything. So this is why we have a huge gap anyway, not only with them, but in any kind of production, because the clubs are shut down and the whole musical production is, you know, very questioned right now. So that's why we don't collaborate in that sense right now.
On one side, you're like recycling, you're working, you're like collecting, you're hunting. That's actually what you're doing. It's one of the great moments in the film when you discover that you have to go out and hunt again. Do you personally have the feeling like history keeps repeating itself? Is now with refugees that you're meeting in this movie and that you were now working with, is there something repeating which you experience in your life and in your career?
Absolutely. I mean, now in the meantime, I'm 50. Say I have some certain experience in life, and I really believe that the history is permanently repeating itself. And if you think back a few generations before us, the same story, people are permanently migrating. And I guess the root of the human civilization, the history, is based in migration to some extent, in moving. This is what made us, I guess, as developed as we are nowadays. And that's why, back to your question, yes, sure, I really think it is permanently repeating. It's a perpetual process which happens over and over again. And this is why we say in the movie, okay, change is permanently happening. Now the question is only how, what do we do out of it? How do we make the best out of this dynamic, which we recognize as a change?
Yes, thank you. Sergej, tell me more about the filmmaking. How long, this is a question that I'm really telling it for the audience now. How long were you filming with Robert? How much time did it take, like the pure filming, and afterwards editing process? It's something that our audience always asks, like one of the first questions.
Okay, I started shooting in 2016. And I spent 3.5 years together with Robert and his family. And your question, how we achieved that kind of relation where it was allowed for me and my crew to follow Robert in his private life, the same as his music. Through the 3.5 years, I have to say thanks to Robert and his family. I'm really grateful that they allowed me to come so close, and why that was essential for me, because I started this film with idea. It can be big. I'm talking now about the scene of the film. The film is moving through all Europe, and but at some point it was pretty clear for me that putting the focus on Robert, I can make film about Europe. Following him through his journey as a DJ, as a musician who is looking for the new contacts, following the new migration routes, searching for some musician between the migrants. But even in his place where he's living, in the Berlin and in the Kreuzberg, you know, that I believe the last register said that in Kreuzberg they're living more than 180 nations at this moment. It's small Babylon. And in that environment, just following Robert, beside him, you see what Berlin is now. You can even see the changes in the city. You can see how Europe is changing. And especially being at his home with his wife and daughter, when I started shooting, she was two years old. In that home, but they are forced to communicate in 5 different languages. Just putting that scenes beside the family, small home in Berlin with 3 people loving each other, trying to communicate with musicians, and then in the bigger context of the Europe, that was actually what forced me to follow him so close, so intimate, and making the film about necessity of communicate with each other, even if that's not so easy. In the band, on the stage with musicians from 8 different countries, from 8 different cultures, with 6 languages of in the family. But if they achieve that kind of harmony, communication on the bandstand or in the family, then miracle happens.
It is at the end a film that makes you, that surprises you, like from scene to scene. Suddenly there's an older lady in the car asking questions that we normally would wonder if the director would question them in an interview. In this case, it's that old lady, or it's somebody who's suddenly jumping from a bridge or something. It's like these times of like 20 years ago when we were watching those Kusturica films where everything was like full of magic and everything is always happening because the stunning energy is loading up everything and loading up the air. So was it kind, I imagine, how do I finance such a movie? Because if you're describing me, you were spending so much time together. Somebody has to pay you for that you can survive in a way. How did you convince the film funds, and I don't know who was financing your film at the end, to do that film and to keep you financed through it? Because it took a long time. I think you were editing as well a long time.
It was a huge project, really. It was a long and I would say actually I like small films. You know what I mean with small, with not too much characters, not big budget, and I like those films as a public and also as a filmmaker. But this film, from the very beginning, it was pretty clear for me that if I try to make it small, I will work against the film. So I was really happy that in the very beginning of this project, the Dutch film funds recognize the potential of the film. I had, I believe, 3 pages only with idea, what I want to say, what I want to, who I want to follow and why. And that's, in that way, I like as a filmmaker to step in adventure. As somebody said, if you want to say something with your film, don't make the film, just say it. And in that way was also that adventure, what Robert already stressed. I knew what his intention was as a musician, but what will be the trip? What will be the final destination of his musical project, of the film? I didn't know. But it was pretty clear that it will be film moving us through whole Europe, and actually the painting much bigger picture, and that cost us, I guess, 2 years to finance finally. And even through the shooting, we tried to find the last amounts of money to finally finish that. And one of your questions was also how long it was. It was yes. 3.5 year long process of shooting, and the editing of the film was a hell of a job, because it was so much material with so much characters, and again with my intention to follow Balkan Beats as a crazy music which is able to bring different elements, bringing them together. We spent 6-7 months in the editing studio.
Fascinating. Thank you very much. I think it's great to have you both here, of course, to have your film here and to be part of that journey. I have one very last question to Robert. Robert, where's the journey going to? What's your next aim, goal, or direction, maybe?
This is a very tough question. You know, I'm now like, what, 51, and well, if I may be honest, I would love to somehow invent something very new, but I don't think I will make it. I don't think it's going to happen. Yet I will keep experimenting with snippets of this culture and the other culture, and well, yeah, my knowledge and technology I have, and then try to put something on the map. The time will show if something very interesting or not really interesting comes out of it. This is my next, let's say, goal, to am Ball bleiben, to keep going, and then let's see what does it do to the world.
Well, again, thank you both very much for your film. It's really yeah, fascinating to follow you both, and I think it's hard to like accept at the end of the film that it's over, because you feel like it's going on and going on and going on, and you wonder maybe next year we watch the next film, because it's just going on. It would be a great ship that nobody wants to miss. So great that we could speak. Thank you so much, and yes, have a good time, and I hope the best to you and to your film.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Oh, sorry, we spoke.
The same, thank you for having us, and I hope that the public in Munich will enjoy this film, and so pity that we cannot be there, play Balkan Beats and drink some of your great beer.
Drink some Bavarian beer, yeah. Augustina, bro. We are not supposed to make up.
A lot of. So, see you next year. Bye.
See you, bye-bye, thank you.